Hello, everyone. My name is Adam Hurlis. This is my research proposal presentation. My problem statement reads as, what are the challenges that teachers will face with distance learning becoming more prevalent in schools? The introduction to the research reads, the spring of 2020 created a scenario for educators that was like nothing they have experienced. All across the nation, educators were pushed to replace face-to-face instruction for remote learning because of COVID-19 pandemic. The shift to online learning created a need for clarification on how educators were making the transition and how teachers constructed their new online classes. The purpose of this study is to see what are the challenges that teachers will face with distance learning becoming more prevalent in schools. The subject of this study were 3 separate grade level teachers at Sandy Valley Middle School from 7th through 9th grade. This study was carried out over 3 years and focused on one grade level each year, starting with the 7th grade teachers in the first year. The collection of data was in the form of interviews. Every grade level was interviewed twice a year, one at the beginning of the year and a follow-up interview at the end of the school year. This study pointed out some of the challenges that teachers were presented with while trying to conduct their classes online. This study will prove to be beneficial to not only teachers at Sandy Valley Middle School, but for any teachers that will have to conduct some or all of their classes online. So the literature review. The pandemic brought upon changes to educational systems throughout the nation. It seemed as if overnight school systems were turned upside down. These changes forced educators to enter a style of education that few knew or even understood how to properly carry out. This paper will display the struggles that affected students, parents, and teachers. Many students suffered because of the lack of knowledge that educators possessed at the time of the pandemic when it came to distance learning. This radical change to education that occurred suddenly did not just affect the teacher's normal way of conducting a classroom. It affected everyone involved in a student's learning process. Many times, educators forget how stressful their curriculum can be on the parents of a student. Parents become frustrated and carry a lot of the stress of their child's educational needs. Education TrustWeb 2020 found 92% of parents responded that it would be helpful if schools would provide resources for parents to help their child with schoolwork at home. There is a struggle learning curve when it comes to remote learning, and teachers need to use their struggles to help improve distance learning. Many teachers were unable to provide guidance or resources because many teachers were learning how to conduct an online class for the first time, thus creating a cycle of confusion for all parties involved. With a student's distance learning education, observations made by teachers and parents would suggest that many students adapted well to distance learning, while other students experience anxiety, feeling of isolation, lack of focus, and overwhelmed. A child who is unsettled is unlikely to relate to and connect with other people, and until the child feels safe and supported, is unlikely to have the cognitive capacity to fully engage the higher level processes that are essential for learning and reasoning. Perry 2019. In 2020, you had a pandemic, family stress, school, work. This is a recipe for a student to be stressed out. The Center for Disease 2020 found that any childhood trauma can affect how a child functions day to day. Trauma can affect a child's ability to handle emotion, build relationships. A teacher's job is already difficult, and sometimes it's demanding to spot a child going through or displaying behaviors of recent trauma when you're face to face. The real problem becomes, how can you be vigilant of your student's behavior while conducting an online class? Perry 2019 states that teaching students remotely can encompass a safe and supportive environment that improves a student's ability to engage and learn. Up to this point, it sounds like teachers are not doing a good job when it comes to implementing their distance learning classes. That simply is not the highlight of the research. Over the past year and a half, teachers are recreating lessons and starting from scratch when it comes to distance learning. Educators from all across the nation are taking their in-class lessons and recreating them into distance learning lessons. Many educators develop their distance learning classrooms through their own creativity. Teaching in a tumultuous time therefore requires a high sense of innovativeness, as well as generous flexibility to promote delightful rather than painful learning activities. Martinez Colo, 2018. Ramadi, 2021, found it is of the utmost importance to understand teachers' integration of technology and distance learning adoption. Everyone in the school district needs to not only be on the same page when it comes to the correct implementation of distance learning, but what are the correct education technologies, programs, software, and activities to accomplish the intended learning outcomes. That is the end of my literature review. I will pick up my next video and I will discuss or begin discussing the application research method and what method I selected to carry out this study.